The year was 5024, and the galaxy had not seen war in 3,000 years. Peace was not just a hope anymore. It was a way of life. Every species in the Concordat followed the old treaties. No fighting. No stealing worlds. No harming the innocent. Captain Alan Harris stood on the bridge of his ship, the Meridian. It was a simple transport vessel, nothing fancy. For 15 years he had carried colonists and supplies between Earth and the outer settlements. The job was quiet and safe. That was how he liked it. His daughter Sophie sat in the corner of the bridge, drawing pictures of stars and planets. She was 9 years old with bright eyes and a smile that made every crew member happy. "Dad, how much longer until we reach the colony?" Sophie asked, not looking up from her drawing. Alan checked the navigation panel. "About 6 hours, sweetheart. Why don't you go play with the other kids in the recreation room?" 22 other children were on board. Their families were moving to New Terra, a fresh colony world where land was cheap and opportunities were plenty. The children had become friends during the journey, running through the corridors and playing games. Their laughter filled the ship with joy. Sophie jumped up and ran toward the door. "Okay, Emma and Jake want to build a fort." Alan watched her go, feeling grateful. Life was good. Humanity had come so far. No more wars, no more violence, just peaceful expansion across the stars. Then the alarm started screaming. "Captain, we have a massive ship dropping out of hyperspace directly ahead," his co-pilot, Greg Palmer, shouted. His fingers flew across the controls trying to get readings on the vessel. Alan's blood went cold. The view screen showed a ship that dwarfed the Meridian. It was dark gray, covered in weapons, and shaped like a blade. He recognized the design from history books. "Valkyrian Empire. Hail them," Alan ordered, keeping his voice steady. "Ask what they want." Greg tried, but there was no response. The dreadnought just hung in space, blocking their path. Alan felt sweat on his forehead. The Valkyrians were old, powerful, and proud. They had been a warrior race once, conquering worlds before the Concordat formed. Now they followed the peace treaties like everyone else, or so everyone thought. "Captain, they're launching boarding pods." Greg's voice cracked with panic. "Evasive maneuvers. Send a distress signal to Earth." Alan grabbed the ship-wide communications. "All passengers, this is the captain. Get to the central safe room immediately." "This is not a drill." The Meridian turned hard, trying to avoid the incoming pods. But the transport was slow and the pods were fast. They slammed into the hull with metallic thuds that echoed through every corridor. Alan heard screaming from below. "Greg, seal the bridge. Get security teams to protect the passengers." But it was already too late. The Valkyrians cut through the hull like it was paper. Alan watched on the security cameras as tall reptilian soldiers poured into his ship. They wore black armor and carried weapons that glowed with blue energy. The security team tried to fight back with their stunners, but the Valkyrian shields absorbed every shot. Alan ran from the bridge, heading for the recreation room where Sophie had gone. His heart hammered in his chest. The corridors were chaos. Passengers ran in terror while Valkyrian soldiers moved with cold efficiency. He reached the recreation room and found Nightmare. The children were huddled in one corner, crying and screaming. Their parents fought desperately to protect them, but the Valkyrians simply pushed them aside. One soldier held Emma, a 7-year-old girl with red hair, while she kicked and screamed for her mother. "Sophie," Alan roared, spotting his daughter. She saw him and tried to run, but a Valkyrian grabbed her. Alan threw himself at the soldier, punching and clawing. The alien was stronger, much stronger. It knocked Alan down with one swing of its arm. He hit the floor hard, tasting blood. "Dad!" Sophie reached for him, tears streaming down her face. Alan tried to get up, but another Valkyrian pressed a boot against his chest, pinning him down. He could only watch in horror as they gathered all 23 children. The parents were held back, forced to watch their children being taken. "Please," Alan begged, looking up at the soldier holding Sophie. "Please don't take her. Take me instead. Take anything, please." The Valkyrian did not respond. It carried Sophie toward the exit. She fought the whole way, calling for her father. The sound of her voice broke something inside Alan. The Valkyrians moved with military precision. Within 10 minutes, they had taken every child on the ship and were retreating to their pods. The last soldier to leave stopped at the bridge entrance. It spoke in perfect human language, its voice cold and mechanical. "These children belong to the Empire now. They will be raised as warriors, strong and loyal. Any attempt to take them back will be considered an act of war. Tell your leaders the price of interference is extinction." Then it was gone. The boarding pods detached and flew back to the dreadnought. Alan, bleeding and broken, dragged himself to the bridge. He collapsed into his chair and watched through tears as the Valkyrian ship jumped to hyperspace, taking 23 human children with it. The Meridian hung in empty space, its hull breached, its crew traumatized. Parents wailed in grief. Fathers punched walls until their knuckles bled. Mothers collapsed, unable to breathe through their sobs. Greg sent the distress signal with shaking hands. Earth responds. They're sending rescue ships. They want to know what happened. They took our children, Alan said, his voice hollow. They just took our children. He thought of Sophie's smile. Her drawings. The way she hummed while she worked. She was gone. Stolen by monsters who thought they could just take whatever they wanted. Nicole Morrison held her son Jake, who was safe only because he had been in the bathroom when the Valkyrians came. But his sister Emma was gone. Jake sobbed into his mother's shoulder, asking over and over where Emma was. Nicole had no answer. The rescue ships arrived 3 hours later. Medical teams treated the wounded. Counselors tried to comfort the grieving families. But nothing could fill the hole left by those missing children. Alan sat alone in the empty recreation room, holding one of Sophie's drawings. It showed their family, stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. At the bottom, in child's handwriting, it said, "My dad is a hero." He crumpled the paper in his fist and made a promise. He would get her back. No matter what it took, no matter who he had to fight, Sophie would come home. The Meridian limped back to Earth carrying broken families and a message that would change everything. The age of peace was ending. Humanity's children had been stolen, and someone would pay for that crime. In his quarters, Alan stared at a photo of Sophie. She was laughing in the picture, caught in a moment of pure joy. He touched the glass gently. "I'm coming for you, sweetheart," he whispered. "Daddy's coming." Behind him, Earth grew larger in the viewport. The blue and green world that humanity called home, a world that was about to go to war. Ambassador Helen Cross stood in the grand chamber of Unity Prime, the massive space station where the Galactic Concordat made all its decisions. 200 alien species had representatives here. The chamber was built to hold them all, a massive dome with seats rising in circles toward the ceiling. Translator devices hung in the air, converting every language instantly. Helen had been a diplomat for 30 years. She had negotiated trade deals, settled disputes, and built friendships across the galaxy. Today was different. Today, she was not here to negotiate. She was here to demand justice. The families of the missing children sat in the observation gallery above. Alan Harris was there, his face pale and tired. Nicole Morrison held her son Jake's hand tightly. 23 families, their lives destroyed, watching to see if the galaxy would help them. High Chancellor Vornak, a tall being made of crystal that reflected light in rainbow colors, called the session to order. His voice echoed through the chamber like wind chimes. The Emergency Council recognizes Ambassador Helen Cross of Earth. You may present your case. Helen stepped forward. She had prepared a speech, full of diplomatic language and careful words. But looking up at those families, she threw it away. 3 days ago, the Valkyrian Empire attacked a civilian transport. They boarded the ship. They took 23 children by force. These children were innocent. Their families were peaceful. And the Valkyrians stole them like property. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species looked shocked. Others looked uncomfortable. The Valkyrian commander told us these children will be raised as warriors for the Empire. He said any attempt to rescue them would be war. The Empire has violated every treaty we hold sacred. They have broken the peace, and I stand before you today to demand action. Immediate action. Ambassador Zathara of the Mothkai floated down from her seat. She was insect-like, with 4 arms and wings that shimmered. Her voice was soft and buzzing. We understand your grief, Ambassador Cross, truly we do. But we must move carefully. The Valkyrian Empire is powerful. Any military action could restart the galactic wars. Perhaps negotiation is the better path. Helen felt anger rising in her chest. Negotiation? They stole children. Would you negotiate if they took your offspring? The Concordat has procedures for such violations, said the representative from the Chiton Collective. He looked like a giant crab, his shell a deep blue. Economic sanctions, trade restrictions, diplomatic isolation. These tools take time, but they work. Time? Alan Harris stood up in the gallery. Guards moved toward him, but Helen waved them off. How much time? My daughter is 9 years old. How long should she suffer while you debate sanctions? The High Chancellor's crystals dimmed. Sir, you must remain silent or leave the gallery. No. Nicole Morrison stood beside Alan. Other families rose with her. You need to hear us. Our children are prisoners. Every day they spend with those monsters is a day of terror. We need help now, not years from now. Security guards moved in, but Helen spoke quickly. High Chancellor, these people have every right to be heard. Their children were taken from Concordate space, under Concordate protection. We promised to keep them safe. We failed. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species argued for immediate military response. Others counseled patience. The Luminar, beings of pure light, offered prayers and meditation, but nothing practical. The debate went on for hours. Helen presented evidence. Videos from the Meridian showing Valkyrian soldiers taking children, medical reports of injuries sustained during the attack, psychological evaluations of the traumatized families. Nothing moved the council. Finally, the High Chancellor called for a vote. The question was simple. Would the Concordate authorize military force to rescue the human children? Helen watched the voting display. Red lights appeared across the board. No. 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 Species after species voted against action. Some abstained. A few voted yes, but not nearly enough. The final count appeared on the main screen. Military intervention. Denied. Helen felt like she had been punched. The gallery above erupted in screams and cries. Alan collapsed into his seat, head in his hands. Nicole held Jake close, both of them crying. The High Chancellor spoke over the noise. The Concordate will pursue diplomatic channels. We will impose economic sanctions on the Valkyrian Empire. We will send strong messages of condemnation. But we will not risk galactic war. The peace must be maintained. The peace? Helen's voice cut through the chamber like a knife. What peace? Children were stolen. Families were attacked. And you do nothing. This is not peace. This is cowardice. Ambassador Cross, you are out of order. No, you are out of order. All of you. Helen pointed at the assembled representatives. For 3,000 years, humanity has followed your rules. We joined your Concordate in good faith. We trusted you to protect us, and when we needed you most, you abandoned us. She turned and walked out. The families followed her, a river of grief flowing from the chamber. Behind them, the council continued its debate about proper procedures and diplomatic protocols. Empty words that meant nothing. On the shuttle back to Earth, Helen sat with the families. No one spoke. What was there to say? The galaxy had made its choice. Alan stared out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Sophie was alone and afraid, and no one was coming to save her. No one except him. President Daniel Kent met them when they landed on Earth. He was an old man, 70 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. His grandson Lucas had been on the Meridian too. 7 years old, with his whole life ahead of him. Now he was a prisoner of the Empire. I watched the whole session, Kent said quietly. I heard every excuse they made. Helen nodded. They won't help us, sir. We're on our own. Kent looked at the families gathered in the landing bay. Parents who had lost children. Siblings who had lost brothers and sisters. Lives torn apart while the galaxy did nothing. He made his decision. Contact every news network. Schedule a worldwide broadcast for tonight. And get me the defense minister. 6 hours later, every human on every world watched their president speak. Kent stood at his desk, the flag of United Earth behind him. My fellow humans, today the Galactic Concordate abandoned us. They were asked to help rescue our children, and they refused. They value peace more than justice. They value comfort more than courage. He paused, letting his words sink in. I am hereby announcing Earth's immediate withdrawal from the Galactic Concordate. We will no longer follow their rules. We will no longer trust their protection, and we will no longer wait for help that will never come. On screens across human space, people gasped. This was huge. Earth had been part of the Concordate for 1,000 years. I am activating the United Earth Defense Fleet. Every mothballed ship will be restored. Every museum piece will be made battle-ready. We will build new vessels. We will train new soldiers. And we will bring our children home. Alan watched from his apartment, tears streaming down his face. Finally, someone was doing something. The Valkyrian Empire thinks we are weak because we have known peace. They think we have forgotten how to fight. They are wrong. Humanity remembers. And humanity is coming. Kent's voice grew harder, stronger. To the Valkyrian Empire, you took our children. You threatened us with war if we tried to get them back. So be it, you will have your war, and you will learn what humans do when you threaten our families. The broadcast ended. For a moment there was silence across Earth. Then the streets erupted. Some people cheered. Others cried. Everyone understood what this meant. 3,000 years of peace were over. Nicole Morrison held Jake, watching the news reports of ships being pulled from museums. Military bases empty for generations, roaring back to life. Are they really going to fight? Jake asked. Yes, baby. They're going to bring Emma home. Alan received a message on his tablet. It was from the Defense Ministry. They were asking for volunteers with ship experience. Officers who could lead. People who knew how to navigate the stars. He did not hesitate. He sent his application immediately. Helen Cross stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Below, recruitment centers were already forming lines. Young people and old men and women all volunteering to fight. The galaxy had failed them, so humanity would fight alone. She thought about the High Chancellor's words. The peace must be maintained. But what was peace worth if it allowed evil to go unpunished? What was order worth if it protected the strong and abandoned the weak? Nothing, she decided. It was worth nothing at all. Far away on the Valkyrian homeworld, Emperor Thraknor heard about Earth's declaration. He laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his throne room. Humans threatening the Empire? Impossible. They were weak, soft. They had not fought a war in 3,000 years. Let them come, he thought. It would be amusing to crush them. The Mars shipyards had been quiet for 2,000 years. Built during humanity's early expansion into space, they once produced hundreds of vessels each year. Then peace came and the yards fell silent. The massive construction bays became tourist attractions. School children took field trips to see where their ancestors built the ships that carried humanity to the stars. Now the yards burned bright with activity. Welding torches lit up the darkness of space. Construction drones moved in coordinated swarms. Every bay was full, building warships that humanity had not needed in 3 millennia. Dr. Lisa Monroe walked through one of the design labs, reviewing blueprints with her team. She was 35 years old, brilliant, and had spent her entire career developing peaceful technologies. Fusion reactors for colonies, medical equipment that could cure diseases, terraforming tools that turned dead rocks into living worlds. Now she was designing weapons. The problem is simple, she told her team. The Valkyrians have been building warships for 10,000 years. Their shields are better. Their armor is stronger. Their weapons hit harder. We cannot match them with conventional technology. A young engineer named Carlos raised his hand. So what do? We cheat. Lisa pulled up a hologram of a torpedo. This is a standard Valkyrian shield. It stops energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, but it does not stop nanites. She showed them her design. Medical nanites reprogrammed to eat through metal. They would burrow into enemy hulls like termites through wood. Once inside, they would target critical systems, engines, life support, weapons. That is horrible, someone whispered. Yes, Lisa agreed. War is horrible. But if we want our children back, we need to be more horrible than the enemy. The team worked 20-hour days. Every peaceful technology was examined for military applications. Terraforming lasers became ship-mounted beam weapons. Asteroid mining explosives were converted into planet-killer bombs. Cargo drones were turned into swarm fighters. Admiral Chris Wade stood on the bridge of the EDF Retribution, humanity's first true warship in 3,000 years. He was 58 years old with gray hair and a face lined by years of service. He had joined the military as a young man, expecting a career of ceremonies and parades. Instead, he found himself preparing for real war. All stations, report status, he ordered. His crew responded efficiently. Weapons ready, shields at full power, engine hot and ready. They had trained for 6 months, running simulation after simulation. But simulations were not real battle. Alan Harris stood at the tactical station wearing the uniform of a commander. After the abduction, he had volunteered immediately. The military had been happy to take him. Ship captains were rare now, and his experience was valuable. More importantly, he knew what they were fighting for. Every member of the Retribution's crew was a volunteer. Many had lost children in the abduction, or knew families who had. They trained with an intensity that frightened their instructors. This was not a job to them. It was personal. Captain Ryan Blake commanded the ship. He was 40 years old, strong and focused. Before the war, he had been a colony ship pilot. Now he led warriors. The transformation had been hard, but necessary. Commander Harris, "Show me the target," Blake ordered. Alan brought up a hologram of Valkyrian Station Omega-7. It was a military outpost on the edge of Empire territory. Intelligence suggested it held fuel depots, weapons stockpiles, and a garrison of 500 soldiers. More importantly, it was a symbol. If humanity could take this station, the galaxy would know they were serious. "The station has heavy defenses," Alan explained. "Shields, automated turrets, and a small patrol fleet. Standard Valkyrian military design. And our plan? We hit them fast and hard. Overwhelming force. No warning, no mercy," Blake nodded. Around him, the crew prepared. These were words no human had spoken in 3,000 years. No warning, no mercy. The language of war. On Earth, Nicole Morrison organized the families into a support network. They met weekly, sharing their grief and keeping each other strong. The group had grown. Other families joined, offering support even though their own children were safe. Jake Morrison, now 8 years old, attended the meetings with his mother. He did not fully understand war, but he understood that people were fighting to bring Emma home. He drew pictures of his sister and sent them to the fleet, hoping somehow she would see them. "Do you think Dad will find Emma?" Jake asked one night. Nicole looked at her son. His father, Pete Morrison, had enlisted as a Marine. He was training for ground combat, preparing to board enemy ships and fight in close quarters. She had not seen him in 4 months. "Yes, baby. I believe he will." She had to believe it. The alternative was too dark to imagine. The United Earth Defense Fleet grew rapidly. 200 ships in the first year. Crews were trained in accelerated programs. Veterans from the ceremonial military took command positions. Fresh recruits learned to fire weapons they had only seen in museums. Admiral Wade reviewed the fleet from his command center. Each ship represented thousands of hours of work, millions of tons of resources, the dedication of an entire species. But would it be enough? "Admiral, we are receiving reports from intelligence," his aide said. "The Valkyrian Empire is mobilizing. They are taking the threat seriously now." "Good," Wade replied. "Let them worry." Emperor Thraknor no longer laughed about the human threat. Reports from his border station spoke of strange new ships, vessels that moved in ways Valkyrian computers could not predict, weapons that passed through shields, humans who fought with desperate fury. His military advisors assured him the Empire was superior. Humanity had the passion of the desperate, but the Valkyrians had experience. They had fought and won 1,000 wars. They would win this one too. Still, Thraknor ordered his main fleet to gather. If the humans wanted war, he would give them annihilation. He would make an example of Earth, reducing their beautiful blue world to ash. Then every other species would remember why the Valkyrian Empire was feared. 6 months after the abduction, the United Earth Defense Fleet gathered at the edge of human space. 200 warships, their hulls painted with the names of ancient battles. Gettysburg, Normandy, Thermopylae. Names from history books. Now given new life, Admiral Wade stood before a camera, broadcasting to every ship in the fleet. "Soldiers and spacers of Earth, we stand at the edge of the abyss. For 3,000 years, humanity has known peace. We built beautiful things. We created art and music. We raised our children in safety. That peace was a gift and we treasured it." He paused, his face hard. "But the Valkyrian Empire stole that peace from us. They took our children. They threatened us. They believed we were weak. Today we proved them wrong. On every ship, crews listened in silence. We did not choose this war. It was forced upon us. But we will fight it with everything we have. Not for conquest. Not for glory. For one reason only. To bring our children home." Alan stood at his station, hand resting on the console. Somewhere in Valkyrian space, Sophie was waiting. Hoping. Believing her father would come. "All ships prepare to jump to hyperspace," Wade ordered. "Target. Valkyrian Station Omega-7. When we arrive, there will be no negotiations. No second chances. We will destroy everything that stands between us and our children." The fleet acknowledged. Engines hummed with power. Hyperspace generators charged. "This is humanity's answer to those who threaten our families," Wade said quietly. "We are coming, and we will not stop until every child is home." Ryan Blake gave the order. "All ships jump!" The fleet vanished in flashes of light. leaping across space toward the enemy. Behind them, Earth waited. Families watched the news, holding each other, praying for victory. Nicole held Jake as they watched the broadcast. The ships jumping away, going to war. Pete was on one of those ships. So many fathers and mothers leaving their families to save other people's children. "Be safe," she whispered. "All of you, please be safe." But she knew the truth. Some would not come back. War demanded a price, and humanity was paying it. The only question was whether the price would be worth it. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at Omega 7. Alarms screamed on the station as Valkyrian sensors detected the incoming human ships. Garrison Commander Rektha stared at his displays in disbelief. 200 ships? Impossible. "All defenders, battle stations," he ordered. "Send distress signal to the Empire. We are under attack." But it was already too late. The humans were not here to talk. They were here to kill. Admiral Wade's voice echoed across the fleet one final time before battle began. "For our children. For Earth, fire!" 200 warships opened fire as one, and the galaxy learned that humanity had remembered how to wage war. The Battle of Omega 7 lasted 12 minutes. That was all the time it took for humanity to announce its return to war. The Valkyrian station's automated defenses fired first. Energy beams lanced through space, targeting the incoming human ships. Missiles streaked out by the hundreds. The station's shields glowed bright as power surged through them. This was a military installation built to withstand assault. The garrison commander had faced raiders and pirates before. He was confident. That confidence died in the first 30 seconds. The human fleet did not slow down. They did not spread out. They swarmed. 20 ships focused on each defensive turret, overwhelming them with sheer volume of fire. The Valkyrian shields were strong, designed to handle conventional attacks. But Lisa Monroe's weapons were not conventional. Nanite torpedoes passed through the shields like they were not there. They struck the station's hull and burrowed deep. Within seconds, critical systems began failing. Power conduits melted. Life support faltered. Weapon batteries went offline one by one. "What is happening?" The commander screamed at his crew. "Why are the shields not stopping them?" No one had an answer. This was technology they had never seen before. The Valkyrian patrol fleet moved to intercept. 15 warships, each one a veteran of a dozen campaigns. They had fought the Chiton Collective, the Luminar Ascendancy, even rogue human pirates in the early days. They knew war, but they did not know this kind of war. The human ships moved in coordinated groups like wolves hunting prey. They did not try to match the Valkyrians in shield strength or armor thickness. Instead, they danced around the larger vessels, striking weak points. Engine sections, sensor arrays, bridge modules. Captain Ryan Blake watched the battle from the Retribution's bridge. His ship led a squadron of 12 vessels, targeting a Valkyrian cruiser twice their size. The enemy fired, and Blake's pilot, a young woman named Sarah Lynn, twisted the ship in ways that made the crew grab their seats. "They are too slow," she said, grinning despite the danger. "These big ships handle like cargo haulers." "Do not get cocky," Blake warned. "One hit and we are dead." Alan Harris coordinated the tactical display, marking targets and directing fire. He had studied Valkyrian military doctrine for months. Their ships were powerful but predictable. They relied on strength, not speed. Armor, not maneuvers. "All squadrons, focus fire on the cruiser's engine section," he ordered. Nanite torpedoes, full spread. 12 ships fired as one. The torpedoes struck and burrowed. The Valkyrian cruiser tried to turn, tried to bring its heavy weapons to bear, but its engines were already dying, eaten from within by microscopic machines. Direct hit. "Enemy vessel is losing power," someone shouted. The cruiser drifted, helpless. Blake did not hesitate. "Finish it." Energy beams cut through the dying ship, and it exploded in a flash of light. The crew of the Retribution cheered. Their first kill, the first of many. Across the battlefield, the pattern repeated. Human ships swarmed, overwhelmed, and destroyed. The Valkyrians fought bravely, but bravery was not enough. Their weapons could not hit targets moving so fast. Their shields could not stop weapons that ignored them. On the station, the commander made a final choice. If he could not win, he would make the humans pay. He activated the self-destruct sequence, intending to take as many enemy ships with him as possible. Alan saw the energy spike on his sensors. "Station is overloading. They are going to blow. All ships, pull back," Wade ordered from the fleet command vessel. But Blake had a different idea. Helm, take us in close. Target the station's reactor core. Sir? Sarah looked back, confused. If we hit the core just right, we can cause a controlled detonation. Straight up, not out. Saves our ships. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was exactly the kind of thinking the Valkyrians would never expect. Sarah pushed the Retribution forward, racing toward the dying station. Blake called out coordinates, his hand steady despite the danger. The ship's weapons locked on target. Fire! The beam struck the reactor core at the perfect angle. The explosion vented upward, away from the fleet. The station tore itself apart, but no human ships were caught in the blast. The remaining Valkyrian patrol ships, seeing their base destroyed and half their fleet dead, made a choice that would have shamed their ancestors. They ran. Engines flaring, they jumped to hyperspace and fled. Admiral Wade watched them go. He could have pursued, could have destroyed them all, but that was not the mission. All ships, status report. The reports came in. Casualties were lighter than expected. 3 ships damaged but repairable. 72 crew members dead. It was a tragedy, but it was also a miracle. They had won their first battle against an enemy that outgunned them in every way. Good work, everyone, Wade said. But this is only the beginning. Prepare salvage teams. I want every piece of Valkyrian technology analyzed. Learn everything. Blake allowed himself a moment of pride. Then he thought of Sophie, Emma, Lucas, and the 20 other children. They had won one battle, but the war had just started. On the station's wreckage, Marine teams in powered armor searched for survivors and intelligence. Sergeant Pete Morrison led his squad through twisted corridors, stepping over bodies and broken equipment. He was 32 years old, strong and determined. Before the war, he had been a construction worker. Now he was a soldier, fighting to bring his daughter Emma home. Check every terminal, he ordered his squad. We need data on where they took the children. They found a damaged computer core and pulled the data storage. It would take weeks to analyze, but every bit of information helped. The Valkyrians were not just warriors. They kept records, filed reports, followed procedures. Those procedures would be their downfall. News of the victory spread across human space within hours. Earth celebrated. Families of the missing children felt hope for the first time in months. Maybe, just maybe, this would work. But Nicole Morrison did not celebrate. She watched the casualty list, praying Pete's name would not appear. When it did not, she felt relief and guilt in equal measure. 72 families had lost someone today. Their children would grow up without parents, just so other children could maybe come home. The cost was already terrible, and the war had barely begun. Emperor Thraknor received the report of Omega-7's destruction in his throne room. He listened in silence as his advisors explained how a human fleet had destroyed a military station in under 15 minutes. How Valkyrian ships had fled from battle, how the Empire's territory had been violated. Impossible, he said finally. Humans are weak. They have not fought in 3,000 years. Clearly they remember how, his military commander replied. My Emperor, we underestimated them. Their technology is strange. Their tactics are unconventional, and they fight with suicidal determination. Thraknor stood, his massive reptilian form towering over his advisors. Then we will teach them the price of challenging the Empire. Gather the main fleet, every ship, every soldier. We will strike at Earth itself and burn their homeworld to ashes. That will violate the Concordat treaties. The Concordat is dead. The humans killed it when they withdrew. Now there are no rules, only power. The Emperor's eyes gleamed with cold fury. Send the fleet to Earth. I want the human homeworld reduced to a lifeless rock. Let it be a lesson to every species that thinks to challenge us. The orders went out. Across Valkyrian space, the greatest war fleet in the Empire's history began to gather. 3,000 ships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering. Weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand suns, an armada designed to conquer galaxies. Admiral Wade received intelligence reports about the gathering fleet. His analysts showed him the numbers, the ship types, the projected strength. It was overwhelming. Earth's defenses, even reinforced, could not stop such a force. They are going to attack Earth, he said quietly. What do we do? His aide asked. Wade studied the star charts. The Valkyrian fleet was gathering at their homeworld, Velkar Prime. From there they would jump to Earth. The journey would take days, maybe a week unless humanity struck first. The children are on Velkar Prime, Wade said. Intelligence confirms it. The Emperor keeps them in his palace. Yes, sir. but Velkar Prime is their capital, their most heavily defended world, and their entire fleet is gathering there preparing to leave. Wade smiled grimly, which means if we hit them now, we catch their whole military in one place. Away from Earth. Sir, that is suicide. We have 200 ships. They will have thousands. Then we better make those 200 count. Wade turned to his communications officer. Send orders to the fleet. New target Velkar Prime. We are going to save our children and break the Empire's back at the same time. On the Retribution, Alan received the new orders. For a moment he could not breathe. They were going to Velkar Prime, to the Emperor's palace, where Sophie was. All hands prepare for combat, Blake announced. This is it. This is what we have been training for. The crew prepared in silence. Everyone understood what this meant. They were attacking the heart of the Empire. Many would not survive, but if they succeeded, the children would be free. Alan looked at Sophie's picture taped to his console. I'm coming, sweetheart. Daddy is almost there. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, racing toward Velkar Prime. Behind them, Earth waited in fear and hope. Ahead, the greatest battle in 3,000 years was about to begin. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Velkar Prime system, and alarms screamed across the Velkarian homeworld. Emperor Thraknor stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. 200 human ships appearing at the heart of the Empire. It was madness. It was impossible. It was happening. All orbital defenses, open fire, he roared. Launch the ready fighters. Destroy them! The planet's defensive grid came alive. Hundreds of weapon platforms orbited Velkar Prime, each one capable of destroying a ship with a single shot. Energy beams lit up space like deadly fireworks. Missiles streaked out in swarms. The Velkarian defense was exactly what everyone expected. Overwhelming firepower. Admiral Wade had planned for this. Fleet split into 3 groups. Admiral Pierce, take Group Alpha and engage the orbital platforms. Buy us time. Group Beta, establish defensive perimeter. The Velkarian main fleet will return soon. Group Charlie with me. We are going to the surface. Admiral Janet Pierce, commanding Group Alpha, led 70 ships straight at the orbital defenses. It was a suicide mission and everyone knew it. Her ships spread out, drawing fire away from the others. Velkarian weapons found their marks. The EDF Valiant exploded, taking 200 souls with it. The EDF Marathon lost its engines and drifted helpless. Keep firing, Pierce ordered, even as her own ship shook from impacts. Give them hell! Her ships returned fire with everything they had. Nanite torpedoes, energy beams, kinetic missiles. One by one, the orbital platforms died, but so did human ships. The EDF Warrior, the EDF Guardian, the EDF Liberty, names that would be remembered forever, bought with the lives of brave crews. Captain Ryan Blake commanded Group Charlie, 60 ships racing toward the planet's surface. The Retribution led the way, her shields flaring as defensive fire tried to stop them. Sarah Lynn at the helm, dodging and weaving through the weapons fire with skill that seemed almost supernatural. Atmospheric entry in 30 seconds, she called out. Alan stood at tactical, coordinating the assault. His hands shook slightly, but his voice was steady. Marine teams, prepare for drop. Target is the Imperial Palace, coordinates transmitted. Rules of engagement. Anyone who stands between you and those children dies. In the drop bay, Sergeant Pete Morrison checked his armor one last time. Around him, 400 other Marines did the same. They were humanity's best, veterans of a dozen boarding actions, trained in close combat and urban warfare. Today they would storm a palace and face the Emperor's personal guard. Listen up, Pete shouted over the roar of engines. My daughter is in that building. So are 22 other kids. We are bringing them home. I do not care how many guards are there. I do not care about their armor or their weapons. Nothing stops us. Understood? Yes, sir. The Marines roared back. The ships broke through the atmosphere, racing toward the palace. It was a massive structure of gold and crystal, beautiful and terrible. Velkarian fighters rose to meet them, but Blake's ships tore through them like a storm. The Retribution's guns blazed, clearing a path. Drop zone in 10 seconds. Sarah called, "Go, go, go," Pete ordered. The drop pods launched, carrying Marines toward the surface. They hit the palace grounds hard, armor absorbing the impact. Velkarian guards opened fire immediately. Energy bolts filled the air, but the human armor was tough. Marines returned fire, advancing in coordinated teams. Pete led Squad 1 toward the main entrance. A dozen Velkarian soldiers blocked the way, armed with weapons that could cut through steel. Pete did not slow down. He fired his rifle, each shot finding a target. His squad moved with him, a wall of human determination that nothing could stop. They breached the entrance, fighting through corridors of gold and crystal. Valkyrian guards fought desperately, but they were defending a building. The Marines were fighting for their children. It was not a fair fight. Above, in orbit, the battle continued. Admiral Pierce's group was down to 40 ships, but they had destroyed most of the orbital defenses. The cost was terrible, thousands dead, ships burning in space, but they had done their job. Admiral Wade, this is Pierce. The path is clear, but sensors show the Valkyrian main fleet is returning. Eat of 15 minutes. Wade looked at the tactical display. 15 minutes to complete the mission and escape. Or stay and face 3,000 enemy ships with less than 200 of his own. All ships maintain position. We are not leaving without those children. On the surface, Pete's squad reached the palace's inner levels. Intelligence said the children were held in the eastern wing, in what used to be servants' quarters. They fought through room after room, leaving dead Valkyrian soldiers in their wake. Then Pete heard it, a child crying. His heart nearly stopped. "Emma," he called out. "Daddy?" The voice was small, scared but unmistakably his daughter's. Pete ran, his squad following. They blasted through a locked door and found them. 23 human children huddled together in a large room. They were thin, bruised, frightened. But alive, Emma saw Pete and screamed his name. She ran to him, and he caught her in his armored arms, holding her tight. Around him, other Marines found their own children or the children of friends. There was crying and laughter, joy mixed with the horror of battle. "Sophie Harris," Alan's voice came through the comms. "Is she there?" Pete looked around. He found her, a 9-year-old girl with dark hair and frightened eyes. "Sophie, your dad is here. He is coming for you." Sophie's eyes widened. "My dad is here? Really? Really? Now come on, we are getting you all out." The squad formed a protective circle around the children and began fighting their way back to the extraction point. Every Marine would die before they let these kids be recaptured. The Valkyrians knew it and attacked with fury, but desperation made the humans unstoppable. Emperor Thraknor watched from his throne room as humans tore through his palace. His guards were dying. The most secure building in the Empire was being violated by a species he had called weak. Rage consumed him. "Seal all exits," he ordered. "Trap them inside. If we cannot keep the children, then they will die with their rescuers." But Admiral Wade had other plans. The retribution descended through the atmosphere, its shields glowing white-hot from weapons fire. Blake brought the ship down right on the palace grounds, crushing buildings and guards alike. The cargo bay opened. "All Marines get to the ship now," Wade's voice commanded. "Fleet, prepare to jump to hyperspace on my mark." Pete's squad ran for the retribution, carrying the children. Valkyrian soldiers tried to stop them, but Blake's ship provided cover fire. The squad reached the ramp and rushed inside. Pete set Emma down long enough to do a head count. 23 children, all accounted for. "Close the bay and get us out of here," Blake ordered. The retribution lifted off, engines screaming. Valkyrian fighters swarmed around it, but human ships moved to intercept. Sarah Lynn pushed the ship hard, racing for orbit. Behind them, the palace exploded as the Marines' demolition charges detonated. A final insult to the Empire. In orbit, the Valkyrian main fleet arrived. 3,000 ships emerging from hyperspace, ready to destroy the human invaders. Admiral Wade looked at the overwhelming force and made his choice. All ships jumped to hyperspace. "Now, but Sir, Group Alpha is still engaged." Someone protested. "I gave an order. Jump." The fleet jumped, vanishing in flashes of light. Admiral Pierce and her remaining ships, outnumbered and outgunned, covered the retreat. She knew she was not getting out. Her last transmission was simple. "Tell the children we said hello." Then she rammed her ship into a Valkyrian dreadnought, and both vessels died together. The human fleet emerged at a rally point deep in neutral space. Alan stood in the Retribution's cargo bay, looking at the rescued children. They sat together, wrapped in blankets, drinking soup. Safe. Sophie saw him and her face lit up. "Dad!" She ran to him and he dropped to his knees, holding her like he would never let go. She was real, solid, alive. Alan felt tears streaming down his face and did not care. "I knew you would come," Sophie whispered. "I told the others. I said my dad would come. I promised, sweetheart. I promised." Around them, other reunions happened. Pete held Emma, who refused to let go of him. Other Marines contacted families on Earth, telling them their children were safe. The cargo bay filled with joy and relief, a bright moment in the darkness of war. But the cost was terrible. Admiral Wade stood on his bridge reviewing the casualty reports. Group Alpha, destroyed. 70 ships gone. 14,000 dead. Group Beta had taken heavy losses covering the retreat. Group Charlie was down to 40 ships. Of the 200 vessels that jumped to Velkar Prime, only 93 returned. More than half the fleet gone. The names scrolled across his screen. EDF Valiant, EDF Marathon, EDF Liberty, ships and crews that gave everything. The total death count was horrifying. 70,000 human soldiers and spacers, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters. They died so 23 children could live. On Earth, families gathered at spaceports waiting. Some would see their loved ones return. Others would receive only folded flags and condolences. Nicole Morrison waited with Jake, praying. When Pete walked off the transport with Emma, she collapsed in tears of relief. Not everyone was so lucky. President Daniel Kent addressed the planet from the White House. His grandson Lucas stood beside him, thin but alive. Today, humanity paid a terrible price.